Okay.
All right. Uh-oh, it's going to social media. I forgot to change the settings on it. Oh, well, we're good.
Okay.
We're good with this. I'm still going to record it because we want to put original, on the network. 3, 2, 1. Have a great show. I'll see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of From Darkness to Light. My name is Adam Miller. I'm really excited today. I have one of my best friends in the world. Her name is Cherie Kalisher, one of the most gifted psychic intuitive people I have ever met in my life by far. So we're just going to talk. We're going to get to know a little bit about her. I'm going to ask her some questions about her story, and we'll just see where it goes from there. But it's really awesome to have you, Cherie. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm good, Adam. Thank you so much for having me on. And wow, what a great introduction. I appreciate everything that you're doing and bringing me onto here. So I'm happy to answer anything, go into how we met, and I'm even open to do like readings if you want to do that.
We'll maybe today, yeah. If not in the future, we'll see what happens. But I know you want to do. You're incredibly good at that, so we'll see if that comes up. First, let's just start a little bit with your story. So, where do you want to start? I mean, what we normally talk about is addictions, spiritual creativity, stuff like that. But really, it's about from darkness to light. I'm just interested in people's trauma stories and kind of what they went through, how they overcame it, where they are now, etc. I know you have quite a story, so we can go wherever you want to go. You could start as a kid. Like what comes to you?
Okay, so we can go with the theme of From Darkness to Light, and that seems like that was my story.
Yeah.
Pretty spot on, as well as yours.
Yes.
I didn't go deep into addiction at all, so I didn't. But I guess we can start with being a highly intuitive empath in a life that was incredibly challenging. And that's what I would say what my darkness was, and taking on all this karma that, I mean, I'm still not sure about whether that karma was my karma or I took it on for the planet, or it was, cellular DNA, ancestral karma, probably some mix of all of the above. Because very young, I started, I can remember the first past life memory I have, or what I think was a past life memory at the age of like 1 or 2, where I believed that I was, it was a baby, obviously, but I believed that I should have been dressed in long, flowing maroon robes, and I was supposed to be an older man. And I was sitting there thinking, where are all my things? Like, where are my sacred objects? Right? Like I was looking for these metal things that I couldn't quite picture. But when I think of it back, later on, I realized that was some kind of lifetime as a Tibetan Lama. And I was thinking, why is my mother treating me with such disrespect? Doesn't she realize I'm like the eminent teacher of this lineage? And it was just, it was a complete like mental disconnect. And I didn't realize what that was until much later. My mom probably thought I was an incredibly troublesome kid, but things started popping up quite young.
So you had that connection almost immediately, or basically immediately. I mean, 1 to 2 years old. And a lot of people kind of do, and then they block it out. But you didn't, you just kept that. I mean, I know a lot of the people who listen to Soulology are like have similar experiences where they were kind of awake as kids. I wasn't as much, I was psychic, but not exact. I was like more dense and kind of lost in the matrix. But you always had that, right? So as a kid, you saw stuff, you felt stuff, you had this awareness of all these other dimensional realities. Yeah.
Kind of, but I also did have to go through the journey of blocking it out.
Okay.
Because, it's a survival strategy. And the family I grew up in was extremely atheist scientific.
Right.
So my mother was Catholic, my father was Jewish, Holocaust survivor, which is a whole other set of traumas.
Right.
And I learned how to block that out so I could fit in, because it was a very heavy-handed like science background we were given. And so if something couldn't be proven, it doesn't even matter.
Right.
Then there was all the trauma on top of that. So I did block that out, and I started getting these memories back, or finding meaning to them, actually, when I was 15 years old and I had what many would consider a psychotic breakdown.
Uh-huh.
But I see it as a shamanic awakening, because it's like the gifts and the traumas and the other awarenesses were suppressed for so long. And there's that
Yeah.
saying, right? Like if you bring forth what is within you, it will save you. But if you do not, it will destroy you. And
Right.
yeah, so all of that suppression was just coming out in these like really awful, like subconscious ways to destroy me. And that's what I felt was going on. And some intuitives later said that, multiple intuitives said that there were a lot of dark forces coming in trying to suppress and destroy those of us who were the light bringers in that time. That was like the 80s and mid 90s, I guess.
Right.
So there was a lot of darkness, suppression, trauma, and I had to go through the journey of unpacking and unraveling the awarenesses that were underneath everything, and just, flushing out the traumas. I mean, it was intense.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to everybody who is going through some sort of, psychotic break, shamanic awakening, combination thereof.
Yeah. Well, and you're one of the people who have like taught me that the most and helped me to see like how all the awful pain is also a gift, and like the switch over between like the darkness and the psychotic break and the feeling like you're going crazy, and linking that with the spiritual psychic gifts, because I feel like a lot of people just get lost in the trauma and they don't know the light's kind of underneath that. And it's like, to the extent that you go into the dark is also the extent that you have the power to harvest the gifts and become the light. So how did that process work for you? So you were 15, you had a total like break, and like how did you start to find where that was a blessing, or what did you go through a little bit to have that realization like in your life?
Okay. So what I'll describe the break a little bit, because
Yeah.
it's so amorphous just to call it a break. It was kind of like knowing knowing on a deep level that this reality and what I was seeing was not real. And
Yeah.
they say that's the beginning of schizophrenia, but
Right.
maybe in the beginning schizophrenics are onto something. you
Right.
know it was
Right.
an awareness that, and a feeling that if I could punch through or break through this reality, I would be able to see what was underneath. And that was the real reality.
Yeah.
So it was this overwhelming sense of that every day, 24 hours a day, plus a feeling that whatever was on that other side of reality was trying to destroy me, suppress me, break me in every way possible.
Yeah.
So I would have these horrible dreams, nightmares. Many times I just couldn't even sleep at night because it was so intense. And I felt like whatever these dark beings or energies and forces were coming through people around me, coming through my father, and people who aren't necessarily trying to be bad to you, but they're just so mentally broken.
Right.
There's so many breaks psychologically that like these things can kind of creep in.
Right.
So I just felt like that was going on. And what really brought me through was actually this book called Many Lives, Many Masters that I had randomly found at someone's house.
Yeah.
And I read it within the span of a day, and it's all about past lives. So it's about past lives and about the time in between lives where the soul is deciding with its guides, how to take on the next life and what it should be.
Right.
And so I got really into that. I read everything I could by anybody about reincarnation and past lives, and even theosophy and Carlos Castaneda, and everything I could to try to figure out what was going on. This while I was going to school, having to like earn good grades and hide what was really happening.
Right. Right.
It was an extreme juggling act.
Yeah, I know. And
Yeah, so I started remembering all these things that happened that I had to suppress, like the memories of thinking I was some, llama in robes with a bald head, when I was a baby, and remembering like meeting certain people that I'd have this intense connection with and I didn't know why. And it was like, what is going on here? Like, is this me? Is this anyway? So I started putting all this together as maybe this was my soul in some other lifetime, coming through and figuring it out and, tying up loose ends in this life. Right. So
Yeah.
then the things that were tragic about this life and, like the constant, like feeling like, the dark forces are coming to destroy me, that became less bad because it's like, well, there's a meaning to it. There's a reason why this is happening, life stuff. My soul's trying to figure something out. And anyway, I mean, eventually it kind of like, I moved through that and things kind of settled down, and there's more details as to how that happened if you want, but we can talk about other stuff too.
So you shifted it shifted your perception. So you were kind of resonating because it's like it's all one on some level, and the dark really isn't dark. It's all part of the same thing. But when we kind of separate and come down into 3D, we live more in polarity. And so you were accessing, it sounded like, because they say, yeah, schizophrenia is like accessing too much of the quantum field all at once. And then that filters through kind of your perspective, your belief systems, your trauma. So then you're accessing too much, and then you're accessing kind of in resonance what you resonate with, which may be the darker aspects, and that the human brain kind of gets overloaded. But like as you go through yourself, right, and you heal yourself and you heal your perspective, one, you can start to put in some filters so you're not taking on everything all at one time in the human body. But you also begin to see how it's interconnected. And as you shift into the light, then like that darkness doesn't have as much of a hold on you, right? I mean, I remember you telling me you had visions of the planet almost getting wiped out because you realized if not you and others like you didn't wake up and start doing the inner work, that was a timeline that could happen.
Yes, that's what actually many of my dreams, like the catastrophic dreams, were about at that time. Yeah. It was the planet being exploded, massive, horrible, like floods and earthquakes and tsunamis and fires, and just these like global catastrophic dreams kept coming to me almost every night. And it was, I mean, I didn't know what to do with that.
Right. I know that's a lot. Yeah.
And yes, I do feel like we did shift the timelines. Enough of us obviously like went on a good timeline and, took on the karma of the earth and the karma of maybe the astral realms and the etheric realms, and processed it and transmuted it, right? So that those timelines didn't have to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely very grateful for all of that. But definitely schizophrenics can start seeing things that maybe are partly like a certain reality, but maybe they don't know how to cleanse themselves of it, and then it becomes overwhelming, or they get stuck in it, or something like that. And one of the things that really shifted things for me was reading Tibetan Buddhism. So I got into Tibetan Buddhism because I read all the religious, not all the religious texts, but I dug into a lot of real religious texts and found that Tibetan Buddhism just resonated the most. Like it was the most peaceful, and it was the most honest in a way. And I felt like, the first, what is it? The four like truths, right?
Yeah.
It's like life is suffering. Life is suffering. And just to hear that being said by a religious text, and for it to be like an honest, take on life. There's suffering in life. You cannot avoid the suffering.
Right.
It was somehow a relief,
acknowledgement of like, this is kind of how it is. Like, cause like this is how it is the first step to healing anything. It's like just the acknowledgement and acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then what happened? So that kind of gave you a little bit of peace from the Tibetan Buddhism. And then where did you go from there?
Well, in the Tibetan Buddhism, they also said meditate. There's a way out of the suffering. You can have difficult things happen without, the suffering being so extreme if you're kind of detached, a little more detached from the outcome. and from like the ups and downs of life, you know, the pleasures and the pains. You know, if you develop some level of like neutrality there, it can really help. So I did that. I just started meditating in my room here and there and just trying to calm my mind and watch the thoughts. And I would just start crying, to be totally honest about, like, I would weep like for days, you know? Like for days. And I would scream, cry. I mean, all the trauma was coming, like, and I didn't even know why it was so sad. Like I'd be thinking about, I don't know, someone, or I'd read about someone who lost their child in some past life or something. And it would like flip a switch in me, like I'd know that feeling. I didn't have a child, it was 14, you know, or 15, it would flip a switch and I'd be like, where is my child? You know, and I'd be like, what's going on? But okay, I just did it. Like, I didn't know what else to do. It was before the age of the internet.
Yeah. And then you kind of went on this quest to, like, same as me, to figure out like the evolution of your soul and how that related to your human life and karma and trauma. And you slowly kind of pieced everything together and cleared like all these different lifetimes or traumas from the different lifetimes and the storylines, and then slowly kind of came up the scale, like the scale of the darkness into the light. So tell me a little bit about that.
Like, it definitely took a few more tumbles into the darkness before the light really broke its way through. But I really saw that as like dealing with karma, you know, and who knows, this could have been ancestral karma at this point. I believe a lot of it was soul karma, or karma my soul took on for the benefit of the collective. You know, the burden of the collective. Let's see. So after that, so I read up on everything I could. I got into another thing that really helped me was Hafiz and Rumi, so the mystical poets. And I would read a couple of these poems and just sit with them, like just meditate on them and just feel like the goodness and the magic of life, you know, expressed in this poetry. So that was really beneficial. And I had a couple good friends who were into that as well. And it was those friendships through darkness that also really helped, like those connections. Anyway, so then I kind of, you know, I tumbled down into the darkness again. Like multiple times. It wasn't just like a nice smooth up. It was like okay, up, down, up, lower, okay, up a little more. I think that's kind of how it works, unless somebody is so super dedicated and knows the way exactly how to go.
Well, and that's also like we've talked about the old timeline, right? It was like a lot harder back then, before 2012 or kind of even 2015. It kind of felt like around 2015, there was like a huge shift where like healing became much easier and more possible. So this was like the old timeline version of going through every single thing and having, like, we still have to feel the pain and go through the experience, but there was, like, for me, there was all this looping, you know, and it would feel like I would get to a certain point and then get thrown back down again. Like, not just the cycle, because healing comes in cycles. It's like you're kind of always spinning, but the cycle or the spiral moves up and forward. But for me, it felt like I would just kind of get thrown back over and over and over again in like these matrix loops. And that was how it felt like it was, until finally, like, when did it really shift for you? Kind of got out of those sort of trauma karmic loop cycles, because you know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about. Exactly what you're talking about. I would say that kept happening, but the trauma part kept being a little less extreme each time.
True.
Like, in the beginning, I'd meet someone and there was this super intense love that would like propel me into another dimension with them, you know, but then there'd be the loss, right? And that would, like, you know, pull me down, and then I'd go into another dark spiral of everything. So so I probably had, and I've been told this, I had some level of love and relationship addiction. Probably until about until about 2017, maybe 18, and that kept doing the spirals and everything. And so I felt the shift in 2017. Maybe you were on it sooner, hopefully for you.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. A lot of people started around 2017. It seems like things
Yeah, it's
began to
like it kind of really took effect at that time, but I do believe you're right. It did start 2015 or so.
yeah.
Probably it started 2012 and we all just couldn't feel it. Probably started December 21st, 2012.
Well, I feel like it's like a season. Like people would always be like, on December 21st, 2012, everything's gonna shift. And I was always like, well, it's like a global season of like 26,000 years. It's like the day that it shifts isn't going to be this massive change. It's like the difference between the last day of summer and the first day of fall is like very subtle. And that's just a 3-month cycle, right? So I think it kind of did, but then it took time to like kind of come down and integrate energetically. And now I feel like what we're doing is we're integrating it physically. That's what
Yeah,
it feels like to me. It's like the human is actually grounding in like the 5D frequencies and the 5D reality. And now things are changing. It's so much easier to shift stuff. Like when we first started doing this, it was like arduous. Like every clearing was arduous, and you had to cover it from every angle of the mind and ask for everything to be removed and go through every aspect of your soul and every single
right.
lifetime. And you had to like find it and feel it. And really, at least for us who've been doing, like, we just took on this, I don't know, role to do all this stuff. And now, like for people who are just waking up or woke up a few years ago or whatever it is, it's like so much can be cleared like that.
Yeah.
And really pretty easily, even just through like feeling what it would feel like to feel the positive, because
Yeah.
you always have to go through all the trauma. Sometimes you do, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's really unbelievably beautiful and easy these days.
yeah, it is, yeah. No, there's so much there, I know. And I mean, I've heard you tell the stories about the difficult childhood. So why do you feel like you chose this? Do you feel like you chose this as a mission? And what do you feel like was the lesson of it for you? And
Okay,
yeah,
so there's multiple layers of this. So
sure.
I feel like on some level my soul was a bodhisattva. You know, took a
Okay.
lot of bodhisattva vows. And when I first heard and learned that word back when I was 15 or so, reading the Tibetan
Yeah.
Buddhism texts, you know, I remember looking that word up and like feeling it resonate so deeply.
Yeah.
It's like my soul was like, oh, the bodhisattvas, they come and reincarnate in this suffering existence until every single soul is free. Can't
Yeah.
believe it.
Yeah.
The dedication and the love, like it touched me, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I feel like on some level there was that, you know,
Yeah.
one soul aspect was the bodhisattva. Another soul aspect was, how do I put this? I guess it was a male soul aspect. He always felt male to me, as
Yeah.
you know. And I felt like he was, he kind of turned dark. Like he was learning how to dabble and play with the earth's energies through
Uh-huh.
sorcery, through
Okay.
power and control lessons. You know, he was
Yeah.
definitely Atlantean. I do remember Atlantean lives, and there's certain people I've recognized from that
Yeah.
civilization. You know, it's a certain like thing, like, oh, of course, you Atlantis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember. You know,
Yeah.
there was Atlantean lifetime. One really strong one I remember where he actually helped the sinking of Atlantis, you know,
Wow.
the destruction because he was so embroiled in the darkness.
Okay.
What I saw for Atlantis is that it was a lot of high-powered sorcerers, you know, sending dark energies at each other, basically in like a sorcery feud or duel that was just like covering the entire area, and all that like negative energy that was thrown back and forth trying to get
Right.
the sorcerer had to go somewhere, and it's what helped actually destroy the civilization or the islands.
Wow.
And I do have memories of being part of that,
Yeah.
which was fun. And I just have to say that, you know, all these, the dark lifetimes, I mean, I was definitely in ancient Egypt and all of that. And all of these dark lifetimes, you know, where we were kind of playing with, you know, darkness and destruction and these destructive principles and energies, I have absolutely no guilt about them
Yeah.
at all. Even as I was clearing them and seeing them, you know, some people like, you know, shirk away in guilt. They're like, oh gosh, you know, I did that and that, and I killed those people and I sent these dark curses. But no, it's not about that. I never had that as an issue because, you know, I mean, one, I was also the victim of many of these in past lives, as were we
Right.
all. Like, if you were the
Right.
violator, most likely you were also the victim. You know, you just
Right.
have to unite those two and see that, okay, we need to graduate from this lesson, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it was just purely playing with energy. You know, like
Right.
the body dies, the soul recycles. Like, I felt this on such a deep level. The soul recycles and goes somewhere else, gets a new
Yeah.
life, and then all of a sudden here we are looking at each other. And even though, you know, one of them I sent curses to you or whatever, vice versa, you know, we can
Right.
just clear it, you know, namaste. You know?
Well, that's such an enormous lesson that I feel like, and a gift that you have to offer people. Because I actually am one of those, that, as you know, like one of my common ongoing soul patterns has been like the guilt. It's like, how could a light being ever have dabbled in the darkness? How could I ever hurt anybody? That's like a very common, like, sort of light worker empath thing. And I also feel like the more attachment or guilt you have, the more it kind of can draw you into it. And also the more you create these cycles of self-punishment. And one of the most important lessons anyone can learn is the lesson of divine neutrality and understanding that ultimately it is just a game and we are all just here to experience everything. And at the end of the day, we are all divine love. And it's okay. And that doesn't mean you want to go around like killing people in this lifetime. Of course not. But it means like if you have patterns within yourself from other times, other places, whether it's your soul or your ancestry, whatever it is, where there's these deep levels of guilt and shame and self-punishment for something you did or something you think you should have done differently. It's like the understanding that it all really was meant to be and that now you can choose for it to be different helps release so much. Because that's the thing with addicts too. It's like there's this stigma around like, oh, like I'm a piece of shit because I use drugs or I had an addiction or I have trauma, and there's all this shame around it. And the way you heal that is through love and embracing it, not running from it and not judging it. And you're so good at that. And I feel like I said, that's just a huge gift to offer everybody. And now, like, talk a little bit about transitioning or what I just mentioned, but also transitioning from how someone can transition from those self-punishment patterns, even if they're not fully aware of all their lifetimes or whatever, into like the new earth or where they want to go or embracing all parts of themselves. Like, what would you recommend for people, like, as far as to heal that wound? Because it's a very, very common wound.
Okay, well, I feel like the souls that fall prey to that kind of thinking
Yeah.
Are the ones that kind of have in their identity a
Yeah.
bit of like, I am light. I am a
Right.
light worker.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I didn't really have that soul journey. So you know, I kind of, my soul journey was finding fun and excitement, the thrill of being the dark, you know? So that in the hidden dark, you know, but one thing to say about that is even that, all of that, oh, the light and the dark, like that's all a fallacy, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the dark had these really strong bonds of trust with others on the same team, you know, and they had this real sense of loyalty and brotherhood or sisterhood with those
Yeah.
also in the dark, you
Right.
know, and it was them, you know, against the light, right?
Right.
So it's totally a fallacy. Like the dark wasn't really dark. It was just like the image, you know, it's just like the ego identification with, you know, what is known as the dark.
Right.
Same with the light, like it's ego identification with this shiny, you know, nice, like, you know, surface, you know,
Yeah.
superficial layer, you know, clothed in the light, but underneath they would backstab each other. You know,
Yeah.
they were sending curses. They were all trying to be like the brightest on the outside, you know, hiding all their skeletons in the closet.
Right. Right.
So it's just maybe seeing that, look, all of it's all of it is a fallacy. All of
Yeah.
it's a veneer, right?
Yeah.
And truly we are all souls, we're all love, you know,
Yeah.
and the dark kind of had it a little more right in that regard, you know, just
Yeah.
knowing like, okay, well, underneath that, I mean, I just saw that in a lot of the dark lifetimes I had, I went into the dark groups or the cults or whatever because of love. You know, like I loved someone in the group, or I was, you know, hurt and wounded in love and needed a place to just kind of, you know, express that. You know, it's like it's all not real, is what I'm trying to say. Like it's all just false. We're all love inside. You know, like we're all the same. We're all made up of pieces of God. Whether or not you look shiny and beautiful on the outside, you know, or angry on the outside, you're still beautiful and you're still God. You're still like a shining piece of God becoming more.
Yeah.
And evolving the universe with your evolution.
Right.
You know? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I mean, just aligning more with that identity
Yeah.
of I'm a piece of God becoming more, you know, becoming more
Right.
evolved, you know, on my journey. And so are you. And so is everybody else. You know, I think aligning more with that than like, oh, I have to look a certain way. I mean, that's also a thing that can be inherited, you know, ancestrally or just in the family line. Like, oh, we all have to look really good. We have to present well.
Right.
You know, no matter what we feel like inside or how we treat each other, we have to present well. And I didn't really come from that kind of family. So I also didn't have that imprint. So
well, and you always had the love too, because you like you said, like when you were going through that transmutation process, you'd feel the sadness, you'd feel the trauma, but then you'd also feel all this love for all the people too. And I know that's something you deeply resonate with, is like those really traumatized sort of, I don't want to say broken because nobody's broken, but almost like how you could maybe perceive as broken sort of people. You always like, you really love them. Like, why is that? Like, just.
I think that might be, why do I love, it's like they, to me, seem the most real. You know, it's like when you're so broken, you just don't give a darn. You know? You know what I'm trying to say? You're so broken, you're crying on the subway, bawling your eyes out on the subway with everybody staring at you. You know, like those, like that time and place in life to me is so beautiful. It's like the shell has cracked and the light is able to come through.
Yeah.
And you know, it might take a lifetime for someone to get there. You know, they might have this hard exterior and then all of a sudden, you know, they're in their mid 40s and the thing cracks. You know, and that's when I find somebody at their most beautiful. That's like the real soul breaking through. It's like the heart like crying out for love.
Yeah.
So I've just always resonated with people in that place. And I feel like people there are most open to something else, you know, open to like support and help, and open to hear like God speaking through the universe directly to them. And that was a practice for me at a certain point too. Like I would see everything everyone told me, no matter how mundane or weird or mean it was, as a God speaking through them to me, you know? So when I needed the most guidance, like I heard of that or thought of doing that, and it helped in a weird way, because that's kind of what's happening, you know?
Yeah, the gift of hitting bottom, because it like completely, it like shatters. It's like it shatters the ego completely, and it creates this ultimate surrender and letting go, because there's just nothing left to fight against or struggle against. I mean, that's been my soul's journey, as you know very, very well, in this life, was like hitting fucking total bottom. And what it's done for me, and I know we know some other people like this, is it creates this deep space of non-judgment. And that's one of the gifts of it, because it's like when you've been so far down, it's like you can't like judge anyone anymore. It's like, even when I personally hear people, like if someone kills themselves and someone's like, oh, they're going to have to come back as this and do it all over again, I'm always like, I can't do that, because I have been so close to that so many times. I cannot put a judgment on that person in any way, shape, or form. Plus, it's not even true, but there's this gift that comes from just falling and letting go. And then, like, I know you've talked many times about the ability to see, like you've taught me, like the beauty and the sadness, like the two of them going together, and even being in these states of deep sadness, but seeing the beauty in it too. And I just think that's such an important lesson for everybody. But also, like after you go there, like there is this potential for us to evolve out of that too. Yeah. And like, it's almost like you have to go there to bring yourself entirely back into wholeness so that then you can ascend more and we can create a world where we don't have to hit that bottom all the time. Yes. Would you agree with that? Or
hopefully, I mean, that's the idea.
Because that's what I want. Like I have gone so far down in this life and so many others. But I feel like creating what the world I'm talking about is also completely linked to that. Because it's like the letting go of the resistance to anything and accepting everything as it is.
Right. So maybe the thing to, or the place to go for you around that is not to judge that place. Like maybe some souls will always need that.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad place to go, or a place, you know, where people shouldn't have to go.
Yeah.
That's between, right, like their soul and, you know, God. It's like they're right.
Yeah.
Maybe it can just be a world where things are easier.
Yeah.
And there's more, and it already is, like there's more information. Like that, like if this was out there when I was going through what I was going through, it would have been a completely different journey.
Right.
You know?
Because more people are doing it. And so the collective consensus raises and the awareness expands. Yeah.
Right. And you know, people these days can just turn on the internet, find YouTube videos and think, oh wow, maybe this is what I'm going through. Maybe I just need to surrender or do this practice or whatever. Whereas that wasn't accessible in like 1995.
No, I feel like so many of the people on this awakening journey have had such a history with so much of the darkness and the trauma that we all do. Like there is loving through the brokenness. There is like understanding that at any moment anybody can leave and being okay with that and loving it anyway. But there's also the realities in the spaces where you do get a long time with people and you do get to stay in these harmonious relationships, and you get to expand and learn through kind of love and things working out too. I mean, that's a perception, like what is working out. But
I think that might be for us. Like, I think other souls could experience that before, but I think specifically souls like ours, you know, the frequency that we're just by nature of who we are, and we're attacked, you know, and try to we were basically, because everything was so dark, it was trying to bring us down with it.
Right.
So these days, it's, as you were saying, everything, the collective is at a better place, and so we don't have to, right? Like people like us can exist and have good lives.
Yeah, but and it's also like, I know we've talked about so many times, just being okay with wherever you are. It's like the ebbs and flows of existence, the ebbs and flows of life. And sometimes you have the experiences that are really wonderful and they last. And sometimes you're on your own, and sometimes you lose your job, and sometimes someone dies, and it's all okay. And as we do raise the frequency, like all of that even is going to get less traumatizing, because there's just more love and more connection to love. And so you see like someone dying with more of a connection to the other side and the lifted veil. It's not so like in separation and trauma. So it's kind of like all that gets harmonized too.
Well, yes, and the cushion of love is greater, right? So if we lose someone we love, it's not like the only source of love we had, you know, on the whole planet. It's like there's just more, just a greater cushion in general.
Yeah. And because that's the thing, is like the interconnectedness is what heals everything. That's even what I've been going through in the last, 5-6 months, is finding some of these online groups with other light workers and empathic people and people on a spiritual journey. And everyone's going through their stuff, and their stuff's coming up, and their trauma's coming up, and they're working through it. But because there's so many like-minded people, it's way easier. Because it's all anyone really wants is just that connection. It's just love, like it is. It's just love in the end. And it's not like we need it and we can't love ourselves on our own. But there's this balance to, the more self-love you have, then the more you actually draw in people to support you. And then the easier the darkness gets and the more it all raises. It's all, intricately linked.
Definitely.
So what do you, we could do a reading if you want, but what is it that you, what do you feel called to do now? Like, what do you want?
What am I working on now? So right now what I'm mostly offering to people. So I say mostly because I'm offering a number of things.
Yeah.
I'm getting back into doing readings and
Okay.
clearings, you know,
Yeah.
remote and in person. And I did those for a couple years, maybe 3 years or so. And then maybe more, I can't remember, but it was just honestly exhausting. So
Yeah.
I had to really pull back from that. I still had a lot of things I hadn't refined yet about how I connect with people and like the energies that I need to pull in to do the clearings,
Yeah.
readings. And I was still, you know, probably quite a bit denser than I am now.
Yeah.
So I was quite good. I mean, it
I
was
know.
fun. And it was enjoyable. And some of the things I remember seeing for people were pretty amazing and life-changing. But
Yeah.
so I'm going back to doing that. I feel like I figured out a way to do it with a lot less strain on myself,
Okay.
a stronger version of myself now. I'm doing that, and I'm doing quantum biofeedback. I in 2018 I started using the quantum biofeedback machine,
Yes.
which is it's a little box, looks like a little video game controller,
Yeah.
and it has wires that come out of it that connect up with these electrically conductive straps to the wrists, the ankles, and the forehead. And
Yeah.
then, so that goes into the box, and the box goes to a laptop with all the software on it. So it sends frequencies out to the person to
Yeah.
see what they're reactive to, and see how they react to it. And then it sends information back to balance that reaction. So basically, it does a test for over 12,000 different frequencies of herbs, vitamins, minerals, diseases, organ systems, homeopathic, spiritual remedies, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it finds out, you know, maybe the 20 or so that are the most reactive, which is what a person's subconscious wants to work on today,
Uh-huh.
because they're basically feeling it on their wrists or ankles below the level of sensation. So you don't feel like you're being zapped, you don't feel any electrical current, but it's just reading out how the body is reacting to the frequency. Does the person want this? Is it neutral, or is it like an allergen? Anyway, so so I'm running that, and then it also does biofeedback retraining to help with everything you can imagine. So deep level relaxation, clearing foreign energies, mind body connection of all different sorts. So it's FDA approved for deep level relaxation and
Right.
neuromuscular reeducation. So neuromuscular reeducation, basically retraining the way the mind and body work together, with which is such a huge, you know, topic. But
Right.
really all I'm legally allowed to say are those two things. So that's
Okay.
the FDA approval. Anyway,
And
it's
that actually linked back to you in Atlantis, right?
probably right.
No, you know,
Positive use
the
of
positive version of
technology.
using like quantum, machines on people.
Yeah.
But I find like your like I think that air zone of genius is like the soul level, energy level clearings. I mean, that's just so like
Okay.
you're doing those for people,
I
and you
am
do
doing
that collective too, right?
I do those for the collective. I mean, I just started up doing those for people again, so definitely you're looking to build that.
Yeah.
And for the collective, yes, if called, you know, I will do it. Like if I feel like there's a wonky energy over an entire city or place
Yeah.
or, you know, locale where I happen to be, I'll certainly do those. Or a
Yeah.
plane, as the case might be. I remember clearing like the plane, everyone in the plane, because I'm like, I need this plane to like have a smooth trip over
Right.
the United States. And everybody in it was so agitated and like
Right.
worked up. I'm like, this is, you know, this is going to reflect something. So
Well, and that's something I want to touch on real quickly because I've done that for years too. It's like the understanding, especially as empaths who tend to just kind of absorb all of the energy of the environment, like at least the disempowered empath version. Like that's the empowered empath version, right? So like you can actually shift a plane, you can shift a room, you can shift a city. Like talk just a little bit about that, like feeling like something's off here, using your ability to detect like subtle energies, and then being like, okay, how do we transform this?
okay, well, yes, you're right. That's definitely an empath gift that
Yeah.
we can learn how to harness and use. And you know, and honestly, we can only do so much. So I feel like we
Right.
shouldn't get like too big for our britches and like go
Right.
to a place where the energy is really low and the collective isn't ready for it and do a clearing. Like there will always be blowback if we try to do that.
Right.
Or like we'll catch a really gnarly entity or something, so I don't recommend being like, I'm an empath, I'm going to clear like the entire world and a whole country and
Right.
people. We have to always check with the collective consensus.
Right. But you can at least clear it for you, right? You can at least create a space that's safe for you, right? You don't have to necessarily absorb all of the energy in a room, like, and just take it on.
Yes. I mean, that can be hard to do, especially when one's starting out cleaning up their energy.
Right.
Just because there can be so many holes in the field due to trauma, due to past life stuff, and
Sure.
even energy pieces being caught in some other dimension and like what goes in that space. I mean, so there's a lot of pitfalls. So I don't want to make it sound like it's super easy, especially for people who are starting out, because there definitely are a lot of things that can happen.
But it's more that it's possible. It's more like that's what you can learn to do a little at a time as you heal yourself, so that you're not like in this total disempowered state, like just absorbing everything around you. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's been my experience. Like, when I first started doing this, and I know we've talked about this, I would walk into a room and then I'd walk out like feeling like I was attacked and I had shit all over me and I had to go home and like try to clear it up, and it would take weeks to do it. But as I've gotten better and better and better, and certainly now that the energy all in all is so much higher frequency wise collectively, like if like a market is off and I feel like I will just intend, if I can clear the space, I'll clear it. And if not, I will just basically say no to absorbing the energy and create like a container for myself, so I can go where I need to go and not feel like bogged down by everything.
Definitely. And one thing I found that's really helpful for that is just having the ability to push love into it.
Yeah.
It's like when you push love into, okay, I love people in this market, even though there's a lot of like lower level energy. I'm just going to love them where they are, not try to want them to be any different at all from exactly what they are right now.
Right, because that's what kind of creates some of the holes and the attachment that draws in the crap or the stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like, here, you're not in a good place and I'm judging you. So here, that just creates a give me your stuff, I'll take it sort of dynamic.
Yeah, it does. I mean, but I do remember going through a time when I was first doing the clearing stuff and clearing myself, where I would walk into Whole Foods and come out with like my groceries and an entity,
Right.
And I'd have to spend the next 3 days trying to like sage it and go to everybody I could, like, please take this thing off of me.
Right.
So there is that, but yeah, I'm pushing love into it helps. Letting everybody be exactly who they are, without judgment, and just kind of holding, like being your space, like not having to shine. That's also a big one, not having to have other people see you as light, but giving yourself permission to just blend in to the collective and the community, and and not have to like look any different. It's like putting on this like veil of like, okay, collective,
Yeah, not having to be like, it's because that's kind of a little bit the hero or the savior complex, or like I have to do it, I have to change everything. It's just more the acceptance of what is, but from a loving space.
Yeah, definitely. That's really positive. And there was something else I was going to say about that, but I can't remember. So if it comes,
Well, we have 10 minutes left. If you want to do some sort of reading, do you, or like, do you feel called to anything, or I don't know if there's time, but.
Well, if you need anything, we can. I wanted to bring up the other thing too about doing collective community service. So that's fun too. As an empath, you can be in that space of, okay, everybody, I just love everyone as they are, and I just don't want to pick anything up here. But, but you can always call in light beings or angels to just help clear the people, pull any dark energies, any non-beneficial spirits or whatnot from a space, or from, from like specific people, without being pushy about it. It's almost like just like an offering. Like if they want it cleared, okay, and If not, it's okay. You know, knowing that
Yeah.
somehow, somewhere, we all come back to God,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, that's one of the things I do is I just ask for something else to do it, basically, so that I'm not like directly involved or trying to shift everyone or everything.
Yeah.
And then there's like that element of letting go and trusting, and that everything will kind of clear in the way that's best for everyone, like for the highest good of all, always like for the, whatever is going to happen for the highest good of all, and let what knows better than me do it. So it's not like the ego or the mind, like, yeah, trying to do too much.
Right. And I can talk about that a little bit because I just went to visit my grandmother,
Yeah.
who's 103. She's out in New York, and she's at a home.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's around 14 or 15 floors full of people in, you know, they're either in like rehab, like, you know, physical rehab, or they have you know, like my grandmother, she just needs round the clock care. A lot of them have dementia or they've had a stroke, and their family just aren't, you know, they want them there just for the care. So I
Yeah.
had to go into this place that was really filled with not great energy. Like the nurses were overworked and underpaid, and the whole place was understaffed. And, you know, and people were like, something had dementia. So they're like shouting crazy things, or,
Right.
you know, I would walk by one door and there was always a woman like kind of screaming, you know. So I'd go in there and I'd all of a sudden just feel in my stomach like, oh God, you know, oh God, I have to go do this. But I really love my grandmother and I want to bring her light. And then I would stand outside the facility for like 10 minutes or something before I went in
Yeah.
every day. You know, I went in every day for like over a week, and I'd be there for 2 hours with her.
Yeah.
So, and I'd stand there and I would just clear the whole space. And it made it a lot easier. It's like I'd bring in the violet flame, like just violet transmuting flame. Let's like clear everything up. Any of these energies that are coming through any of these people, let's just like burn them up, send them to God. I'd bring in like what I call like beneficial spirits, like positive energies of,
Mhm.
I saw that they needed or they would benefit from, it was divine acceptance, like the spirit of acceptance,
Mhm.
where they are in the here and now, you know, because a lot of these people are like on end of life care and whatnot, and maybe they have regrets or they have, you know, sadness and stuff. So I remember clearing, bringing in light beings to clear depression, you know, clear the spirit of sadness and depression. It's like kind of dark, funky energy that kind of settled over everything. So it was clearing depression, sadness, bringing in acceptance and divine, just like that divine connection with God frequency,
Yeah.
and bringing in there was another one. It was I think it was love, just divine love.
Yeah.
And little by little over the course of the week, I honestly felt it for me get easier. I mean, I'm sure I got used to it too, and get lighter. And you know, so my grandmother shared a room there with three other people. Oh,
Mhm.
sorry, two other people. So there were three in a room, and they were just separated by these curtains. So I guess the nurses could look in there. One lady was super lovely and nice. She had dementia.
Mhm.
She just would ask me the same thing over and over, but she was very loving. She was Irish and just had a loving heart. And and then the other one had a stroke and was nonverbal. I think she had a stroke. I don't know, but she was nonverbal, just kind of
Yeah.
making rounds in bed. Anyway, I remember just coming in there with like an intention to bring love into that space and to
Yeah.
love my grandmother, and, you know, see the spirit, like see the essence of love coming through these people, even though they're going through hard times and they're, you know, maybe not all together up
Right.
there. And if I treated them with love, like that's what would come back, you
Right.
know? And if I
Yeah.
put love in my space, I wouldn't pick anything up. Like love is the
Right.
greatest protection there is.
Right. Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it just helped to clear the space before I went in. That's what I was trying to say.
Well, but I think you're also talking about how the inner and outer and your own healing journey relates to the external. So it's like the more you heal those wounds in yourself, like the less you you pick that stuff up. And the more you're able to just accept things as they are, come from a state of love, accept people where they are, kind of understand what it is they need without trying to control the situation. But you also have the power to shift things like into a more loving, harmonious space without trying too hard, without working too hard.
Right.
And it, you know, as you do that within you, then you gain this power and ability to affect, like, it's like switching from absorbing the energy and everything happening like to you in life to everything happening for you, and being able to just at least make your imprint on the environment that you're in. And
Right.
that all comes down to love, and it all comes down to finding the love within yourself. And as you do that, you then have the ability to make that imprint instead of absorbing the imprint, which is, I think, something that everyone who's sensitive and psychic and spiritual is really learning and wanting to learn, so that they're not like attacked all the time or,
Right.
yeah.
And it's like sorcery in a way, but it's like heart, from the heart, you know,
Right.
like
It's
love.
love.
It's like shifting
Yeah.
things, not out of control, not out of the
Right.
need to like gain more personal power, but
Right.
just with love.
Right.
And yeah, that's what I would say is my transition from darkness to light, darkness in the past lives and all the sorcery stuff and trying to control, to learning how to just love and shift things in a positive, divine, good frequency way.
Yeah, it's like this whole new way to basically get whatever you want without manipulating and without having to control, and just using love. But it, like, within that contains the lessons from letting go of the ego, surrendering, knowing you can't control everything, but like going to, when you see the divine in each person and you come from the divine, there's always some sort of solution to bring everything back to love, which is all anyone really wants anyway. So it's like using love just to get more love, and then you kind of get what you want because it's just love. But you know that you're like more clear and heart-centered with that, instead of, you know, trying to control from the mind or getting power or getting ego stuff or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And that happens too, like when you can heal your own inner wounds,
Yes. Yeah.
when all you want is love and you're not after power or like suppressing,
Right.
you're just willing to feel the pain.
And that's where that gift of like hitting bottom comes. That's where that hitting bottom brings you, is to that, like, okay, I really just want love because there's nothing else I'm able to get right now. Like, I have no control over anything, relationships, parents, money, illness, the economy, whatever it is. Like, what do I do? And then it just creates that ultimate openness, which is the prompting to heal everything. Yeah. Yeah.
Very true. I'll agree with that.
Well, we're basically out of time, but like, seriously, thank you so much. I'm sure I'll have you back on again. So where, like, if someone wants to find you, do you have a website? Like, how would they, if they wanted a clearing?
We have a website. It's not quite done yet,
Okay.
but they can see what's there and they can, read about me. And I mean, basically my email and my contact info is on the website.
Okay, what's the website?
It's soulspathhealing.com.
Okay.
It's SOULS path, PATH healing.com.
Okay.
And that's my email too. It's soulspathhealing@gmail.com.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, that was really great. Yeah. Thank you for being on.
Okay. We'll
Yeah.
talk soon.
Okay. All right.